Sure.
Okay. When you were talking about how like divorce and like if you have a family and you have like a divorce battle, how people like sometimes never come out of that. And I remember you saying that in a class before too. So what do you think about that is so like horrible, and what allows people to come out of that?
Okay, well let's think about this for a minute. Okay. And then we'll go back to the symbolic stuff. How many chances do you think you'll have in your life for like a serious, high-quality, intimate relationship? What do you guys think? How many chances are you going to have for that?
3 to 4.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I would say you probably top out at about 5. Okay.
2 down, 3 to go.
So, okay, so, you know, that's not that many chances. Plus, you get old quick. You know, by the time you're 45, you're not going to have a family. And well, you can do that sometimes if you're male. If you're female, maybe, but it gets pretty rough. And you're looking probably at that point at a fair bit of in vitro and that sort of interaction. It's tough, it's hard on people. So, you know, not only do you not have that many chances, you don't have that much time. So you got to get it right. So if you get it wrong, it costs you. Like maybe it'll cost you 5 years. 5 years is a long time. So, and 3 5-year costs is like, you've lost things there that you can't replace. Okay, so that's one part of it is, you don't have that many chances, and it's costly to burn up the time. Okay, the second thing is, a divorce is very complicated. Like, it's not so bad if you get divorced to someone who's reasonable. But often the reason that you're getting divorced is that one or the other or both of you aren't that reasonable. And what that might mean is that you might be negotiating with someone whose basic goal is to make sure that you don't have another day of success in the next 20 years. And if that's their goal, they will attain it. So, and there's lots of ways people do that, and they usually do it by holding their children hostage. And people will definitely do that. They do it all the time, you know. So, you want to avoid that. And then, you know, then of course it's hard on the relationship you have with your children. And like those are probably the most important relationships you have in your life. You know, it's like, might be parents, might be siblings, might be your partner, might be your kids. But I think when it comes right down to it, your parents are old, and so are you, but your kids aren't. And they're just as close. Plus they need you. And so you start twisting and messing that about, boy, it's hard on your psyche. It's hard on the kids too. So, you know.
So then I'm just thinking about that and what you said about how that's a cost. If you mess it up, and that's like a 5-year cost, that's it costs you, right?
Oh, and it might be a 15-year cost if you're in a custody battle, and it will cost you $250,000.
Right.
Or
let's
more.
say, yeah, but like, is it then, would you say, like being a psychologist, that it's better for people to like pursue a relationship that's like not good, to continue to do that and possibly incur further costs than it is to just cut it off, because it would divorce.
It's a complicated question. What I would say is, don't make the kind of mistakes that get you into such a stupid relationship to begin with. Okay, because that's the answer to that question. And the way you do that is by trying not to delude yourself any more than is absolutely necessary. And that means, when you're in the damn relationship, tell the person the truth. And try to figure out what the truth is for you. And don't put up with any nonsense. And stand up for yourself. And also, aim towards the good. You know, if you do all those things, then your relationship is probably going to work. If you're trying to do all those things, really, and you have a partner that will not do that, then leave. But it's a rare person who won't do that if they're stepped along the way properly and they learn how to do it. Now, not everyone's like that, because you do run into some people who are basically devoted towards mayhem and trouble. You know, but usually, you know, a person is a balance of striving for the good and, you know, messing about in the hell. And, you know, you're both like that when you start a relationship, and you try to tilt it towards the good. And then you won't run into that problem. So, but you have to do that right from the beginning of the relationship, you know. It doesn't take that much to corrupt a relationship so that it's not really salvageable. Enough mistakes, 3 or 4 acts of infidelity, you're done. you're not going to come back from that, because the fundamental element of trust has been removed. And then you can't communicate with the person because you don't know if they're telling you the truth, and then you don't know if you're dealing with reality. And if you're not dealing with reality with your partner, it's like, good luck fixing that. It's like you're working on a ghost car while the real one is sitting in the shop with the motor out, you know. It's not going to get you anywhere. So a lot of the issue is don't get in the trouble to begin with. If you are in the trouble, well, then you try to straighten yourself out and see if you can fix it. Well, if you can't, your options aren't great. And it depends on the particularities of the situation. Now, I have people that I counsel, it's like, leave that person. And the rule is, they're lying to you, they aren't aiming up, and you won't be able to tolerate being with them for 10 years without becoming resentful, alcoholic, and homicidal. So that's a bad outcome. There's nothing you can do to avoid it, so you might as well leave. But you know, you have to have that sorted out. It has to be the truth, because it's no fun. It's no good to leave someone who's struggling in the lurch, you know, and you think, well, I'm with this person, they're not going anywhere, you know, maybe they have an alcohol problem, and they're resentful. It's like, but I'm all they've got. Well, they bloody well better want to fix that, because you're not going to be able to fix it. All that'll happen is you'll end up in the same place. Now, if they really want to fix it, more than anything, and they're willing to tell the truth about it, and willing to interact with you, then there's a ghost of a chance you might pull through it. But it's very hard to fix someone, and it's really hard to fix someone who does not want to be fixed. And there's lots of people like that. So,
my name is Debbie, and I live in Huntington, New York. I'm a mother of 2 children, 7 and 9 years old, and we recently had a cell repeater, or a cell tower, placed on a utility pole outside of my house, on the right-of-way of the property. It emits radio frequency radiation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether we like it or not. And it's an eyesore. It's very tall, towers over my backyard. When my kids play, it's what I see in the background. And it looms there. And I wonder, are my kids safe? Are we safe to live in this house now that that has been placed out there? I know I read a lot on the topic recently. Since I've got one, I thought I'd educate myself a bit. It seems to me that children have thinner skulls and still developing immune systems, and they absorb much more radiation than adults will absorb. So they're part of what's called a vulnerable population, along with the elderly, the disabled, the immune-compromised. They're vulnerable, pregnant women. And so my children live here and play here and sleep here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's 70 feet outside their bedroom window. So I went to the town of Huntington and I asked for some answers as to who put the equipment in and what exactly is emitted from the equipment, and are there guidelines for the equipment, standards for safety, and bottom line, is it safe or will we be affected in the long term? And so the answer I got was, you are completely safe. There is no danger in having one of these outside your home. It is FCC compliant. So what does that mean? Well, our standards, our guidelines, come from the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. And because it's below a certain height, there's no monitoring of that equipment required. There's no testing of it required. But they say it's FCC compliant, and so what does that mean? Well, I went to the FCC website and I found that the guidelines come from the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which was written in 1996, over 20-something years ago. And the research that the guidelines were based on was from the 1980s, over 30 years ago. This seems a bit outdated. Haven't there been studies since then to, that would cause an update in the standards, some sort of revision of some sort, maybe. So, well, I did find that the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, agrees with me that in 2012 they submitted a report to the FCC asking them to revisit and revise their standards, their outdated standards. And the FCC responded by opening a window to accept submissions, feedback from scientists, experts worldwide, and they received 955 submissions within a 2-year period. Then the window closed, and everyone waited to see what the FCC would do. Well, to this day, it's still considered an open docket. Nothing at all has been done. It hadn't been addressed. So also, I learned that the limits here for radio frequency radiation emission come from, or actually not come from, but they are much higher than in a lot of other countries. Most other countries, actually. They're much higher here. From what I understand, Italy, their guidelines or their limits are 10 times lower than ours. And Switzerland, same thing, 10 times lower. And I was surprised to learn that even China had limits that were 10 times lower than what we have here in the United States. This is very concerning to me. Why are our limits so high? Well, it turns out the FCC chairperson, Ajit Pai, he worked for Verizon for 2 years as their attorney before he sat in that seat where he is now. And the prior chairperson of the FCC, Tom Wheeler, he worked for the lobbying, he was a lobbyist for the communications industry, for the telecommunications industry, before he became the chairperson of the FCC. So that makes me wonder if maybe there's a conflict of interest here. And in my home, I can shut down my Wi-Fi. I can shut off my router. I can unplug any devices that I feel might create electromagnetic frequency radiation if I like, because it's my home and I have control over those things. But when it comes to this cell tower outside of our window, I'm no longer in control. Those electromagnetic frequency waves, radiation waves, come right into my home and pollute my home, whether I like it or not, whether we like it or not. And my children and ourselves are just exposed all the time now. So what are the long-term effects going to be? I feel like we are an experiment. What's going to happen in decades of living with constant exposure to this low-frequency radiation? There was a study I came across called the National Toxicology Program Study. It was a $25 million impressive study done right here in the United States. And the final results haven't been released yet. Any day now, though. But there was a partial release of some findings in 2016. I believe it was May. And the reason they released partial results was because they felt that what they found was so important that they wanted to get it out as soon as possible. And what they found was that non-ionizing radiation, radiation that does not heat the body, such as electromagnetic frequency radiation, which is what they used for the study, it did cause malignant gliomas, an increase in malignant gliomas, which is brain cancer. So since those partial findings were released, the American Academy of Pediatrics has announced that they now believe there needs to be more research, and so did the American Cancer Society. Dr. Otis Brawley is the chief medical officer at the American Cancer Society, and he said that that study marks a paradigm shift. It's very frightening to be living in my home and watching my young children grow up and knowing that they have this exposure, that we just didn't plan on them having when we chose to live in this home. The World Health Organization classified electromagnetic frequency radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen, which is in the same category as lead and DDT. That means it's a possible carcinogen. But now that the National Toxicology Program partial findings were released, many scientists around the world, many health experts, do believe that it should be reclassified now as a probable carcinogen. But it's not stopping the town of Huntington and other towns across the nation from allowing these cell repeaters or cell towers to be placed on utility poles within just a few feet from people's houses. Something needs to be done. We all need to band together. We need to start a grassroots movement. It doesn't really seem like we're going to get the protection on a federal level. And so we need to get together and contact our representatives and create some new legislation that will protect the residents from this happening. Maybe set back ordinances that will assure that these don't get placed close to homes and schools and libraries and daycare centers. I'm not sure what the solution is, but it needs to start with us. And I hope that we can all find each other and find the time and put the time into this really important issue so that we have some control over our freedom and our homes and our environment, and we can protect our children. Thanks for listening.
Hi everyone, it's June 13, 2018. I'm going to start this video with Grindall61's video that he posted. He interviewing a plumber out in California. The illegal immigrants in California have destroyed his business. He is a plumber. And, you know, this video is going to be focusing on the economy and the condition of the American people. A majority are really struggling. The reason why I'm doing this video is because I get comments from Trump supporters who claim, Carol, Trump is bringing back jobs, Americans are working again. God, you're so negative. You know, look, let me just bring you to this article, Confirmation Bias and the Power of Disconfirming Evidence. Many people have this confirmation bias. In fact, all of us do. If you are unaware of your own thoughts, you haven't really thought about how your brain works, you have never reevaluated those beliefs that you have, then you will be unaware of your brain working in ways that really does not allow truth in. It allows information in that confirms those beliefs that you have, knocking out information. And it doesn't matter if it is truthful information, you will knock it out so that you can continue to feel comfortable and all of the beliefs that you have continue to be confirmed. That is not a quote-unquote truther. So many people, oh, I'm a truther. Well, if you are a truther, that means that you embrace all truth, the truth about your own self, and that means that you have put yourself on the road to self-discovery, self-knowledge, self-awareness, as well as awareness and knowledge and discovery about the truth of what we are all facing collectively. And if you have not done any thinking about your own thinking and how your brain does come up with an awful lot of lies, that you think are the truth, but those lies allow your brain to conjure up these presumptions about other people, presumptions about all of what we are facing, presumptions about the economy. If you are still somebody who puts personality above principle, and still somebody who so wants somebody else to fix the problem so that you don't have to do anything and you don't have to change, you can still go on living your life exactly how you've always lived it, then you will be someone who has that confirmation bias going in your mind. Confirmation bias. It is our tendency to cherry pick information that confirms our existing beliefs or ideas. Confirmation bias explains why two people with opposing views on a topic can see the same evidence and come away feeling validated by it. This cognitive bias is most pronounced in the case of ingrained ideological or emotionally charged views. So, if you are still somebody who is a Trump supporter, then you will look for information that then you can throw out in support of Trump doing a fabulous job. The economy. It really is very interesting to have been on YouTube during the Obama years and hear all of those who were, I guess, conservative or Republican, and they agreeing with me in terms of those monthly data on how fabulous the economy is doing and administrations creating jobs, agreeing that the numbers were so manipulated to make the Obama administration and Obama look good. But now that they got Trump, a Republican, whatever Trump is, he was Democrat, Republican, whatever. Now those numbers, I guess what they hear from mainstream media is enough for them to throw it out underneath videos claiming that Trump is making America great again. And nothing could be further from the truth. But when you have this confirmation bias, and you're somebody who really needs to believe that things are improving, you will knock out the truth. You're not a quote unquote truther. I can't stand that term, but you're not about the truth. You're about making yourself comfortable. So this confirmation bias, we really need self-awareness. That is a quality that every individual needs if they are about the truth. They need their own awareness of themselves and how they think so that they can catch their confirmation biases and they can catch their presumptions that they make and then throw out as fact when it's just something that they have manufactured in their own mind, and they call it a fact. And then, I mean, all of this causes an awful lot of problems. But when you have a belief, all right, you have a belief that Trump is making America great again because he's bringing back jobs to America, and more Americans are working, and you use that statistic. Unemployment, Carol, it's 3.8%. My God, in 1 year, Trump has just miraculously put an awful lot of Americans back to work. All right, so you use that to support your belief that Trump is doing what he said he would do. Do you just stop there? Or do you look further into the unemployment figures? Do you look further into the economy to check out the belief that you have? Because if you don't do that, then you're operating with this confirmation bias and you are not about the truth. So, while it is probably within every individual, oh, don't we so want to cherry pick the information so that we can hold on to beliefs, no matter how wrong they are, we can just hold on to them because it's more comfortable that way. Well, when we do that, we're not on the road of truth. Confirmation bias, tendency to cherry pick information that confirms our existing beliefs or ideas. Confirmation bias explains why two people with opposing views on a topic can see the same evidence, come away feeling validated by it. I read that again. Sorry. Failing to interpret information in an unbiased way can lead to serious misjudgments, can lead you in the direction of the lie instead of the truth. By understanding this, we can learn to identify it in ourselves and others. We can be cautious of data that seems to immediately support our views when we feel as if others cannot see sense. A grasp of how confirmation bias works can enable us to understand why. So, this comes from a book called The Web of Belief. The desire to be right and the desire to have been right are two different desires. And the sooner we separate them, the better off we are. The desire to be right is the thirst for truth. On all counts, both practical and theoretical, there is nothing but good to be said for it. The desire to have been right, on the other hand, is the pride that goeth before a fall. It stands in the way of our seeing we were wrong and thus blocks the progress of our knowledge. So, when the human being is what the human being is best at doing is interpreting all new information so that their prior conclusions remain intact. God. Warren Buffett. Like many mental models, confirmation bias was first identified by the ancient Greeks. For it is a habit of humanity to entrust to careless hope what they long for, and to use sovereign reasons to thrust aside what they do not fancy. Well, this is an interesting article. I will link below to it. And confirmation bias is somewhat linked to our memories. Yes, that is true. We have a penchant for recalling evidence that backs up our beliefs. The most difficult subjects can be explained to the most slow-witted man if he has not formed any idea of them already. But the simplest thing cannot be made clear to the most intelligent man if he is firmly persuaded that he knows already, without a shadow of a doubt, what is laid before him. And doesn't that happen often? So, it happens all the time. You have people who believe that if you are against illegal immigration, you're a racist. You're a racist. Now, American, they comprise virtually the world's people. That's the United States. So when you talk about illegal immigration, we're talking about the illegality that is being committed by those who just cross the border and then have their lives sustained by U.S. legal citizens, have their lives sustained by those who are illegal. There's an awful lot of legal immigrants here in this country. You just have to go to YouTube. Mexicans, furious. They legal immigrants, and they're furious that we now just have this open border and Mexicans are crossing over the border. It's not just Mexicans, it's Guatemalans and people from Honduras, El Salvador. But you're a racist. So they will go to articles that prove their point instead of looking at the whole picture. Americans are being destroyed by illegal immigrants. Like this plumber here talks about how his business died because of the illegal immigrants who, unbelievably, in California, have been granted licenses, and apparently professional licenses. Again, I would have to listen again. Well, I'd have to listen again to this video, but my computer crashed. And they're now working and taking the jobs of Americans. People who don't want to believe that will go find the information that confirms their belief that illegal immigrants are helping the economy. And there's an awful lot of mainstream media articles that support that belief. But they won't look any further. That's the problem with confirmation bias. Just want to point out the fiscal burden of illegal immigration on the United States. State-by-state costs of illegal immigration. These are just the state costs, excluding federal costs. California, $23 billion. And how many Californians are homeless? How many Californians can't afford to live in California and are moving? How many Californians, legal residents of that state, are desperate for help because of the high housing costs and the destruction of the economy, leaving service sector jobs? How many are living in their teachers? You have got teachers, you have associate professors who are living in their cars. And 23 billion goes to illegal immigrants. Stunning. South Carolina, 629.7 million. Georgia, 2.5 billion. Florida, 6.3 billion. Texas, 11 billion. It's your money we're talking about. Wherever you live, it is your money. Kansas, 503.6 million goes to illegal immigrants. Oklahoma, 623.9 million. Arizona, 2.3 billion. Washington, 2 billion. New York, only 7.5 billion. I'm surprised. I thought it would be up there with California. New Hampshire, 87 million. Maine, 42.4 million. Vermont, 44.5 million. Do you think that this is right? No. Do you think I'm a racist for pointing this out? So, look, you want to believe Trump is making America great again, Americans are back at work, and things are just rosy? Go ahead, believe it. But you are so not about the truth. And you like to believe the lies that mainstream media, the Trump administration, and Trump are telling you. So you're no different from those who you are calling the sleeping sheeple, the willfully ignorant. There's no difference. You may have some knowledge about what is happening to us collectively. You may be able to, accept some reality. But unfortunately, you're not at the point of fully embracing truth. You still want to be just as comfortable as all of the willfully ignorant want to be. So the truth about employment numbers, nearly 102 million working aged Americans do not have a job right now. They don't factor in anymore. They're the Americans who are marginalized, irrelevant, ignored, don't matter. This country is really only for the comfortable. Those who are thrown out of that comfortable bubble, well, you get to see how meaningless you are. U.S. unemployment rate has fallen to 3.8%. Okay, we had massive unemployment, and many Trump supporters know that. Right on up until Obama walked out of the White House. Are you going to tell me that Trump, in a year and a half, just unbelievably got Americans back to work in 1.5 years to pull down those unemployment numbers to 3.8%? Really? You're going to just believe that? The lowest unemployment we've had in 50 years? Well, these are not honest numbers. So, let's see. You have to factor in the other category of working-aged Americans that are not currently employed. They are not considered to be officially unemployed because they are considered to be not in the labor force. 95,915,000 working-aged Americans not in the labor force as of May this year. It's an all-time record high, but they just, ignore that. And it makes the federal government, the employment numbers, look really good. But add to that those who are counted as unemployed, which are 6,065,000, add that to the 95,950,000, and you get 102 million. Okay. More working-aged Americans without a job right now than there was at any point during the last recession. So Michael Schneider says, don't try to convince me that the U.S. economy is doing well. And he says, until we can get the number of working-aged Americans without a job under 100 million. So if we're at 99 million, Michael, well, you think the economy is doing well? Sorry. No. Do you realize that we only have, according to the Census Bureau, we have what, 324 million? 102 don't have jobs. You get that? A third of our population. The real economic numbers, 21.5% unemployment, 10% inflation, and negative economic growth. The rosy economic picture that the mainstream media is constantly painting for all of us is completely absurd. Use honest numbers. Okay, so he does the unemployment. Even the New York Times. Interesting that the New York Times touts how splendid and excellent the economy is doing. And, well, the New York Times, that liberal rag of a paper, don't you think that they would be trying to paint a bad picture, like Trump is doing really bad and Americans aren't working and the economy is not splendid and excellent? So why is the New York Times supporting the fictitious numbers that come out of our federal government and essentially saying, hey, Trump, you are doing a really good job? Because they're all in the same game. And Americans, you know, you get socially engineered all the time. So, with all of those who are comfortable, they believing that the economy is doing splendid and excellent, those who aren't working, they're just lazy. It makes that belief really easy for them. The New York Times actually ran an article, the title, "We Ran Out of Words to Describe How Good the Job Numbers Are." What are the jobs? What kind of jobs? Service sector jobs. Okay, so the truth. Honest numbers would bring unemployment to 21.5%. And this is, I'm not going to read all of the economists, their names and everything, but how do we explain this? The government has simply been moving people from the officially unemployed category to the not in the labor force category. We are being conned. Michael Schneider has a friend who has been out of work for 2 years. He is a software engineer, can't find work. Why can't he find a decent job if this economy is doing so fabulously? Inflation. The way inflation has been calculated in this country has been repeatedly changed over the decades. Inflation has now continued to rise while wages are stagnant. That is why Americans, the middle class, being destroyed, but U.S. statistical agencies overestimate the GDP data by underestimating the inflation deflator they use in the calculation. Manipulation of the inflation rate. It enables the U.S. government to pay out pensioners less than they were promised by fudging cost of living adjustments. If inflation was still calculated the way it was calculated in 1990, the rate would be 6% today instead of 3% that they claim. If it was calculated the way they calculated it in the 1980s, it would be 10% today. The prices for housing, food, healthcare have soared, and wages have remained stagnant. And many who have lost the good jobs are now having to work 2 or 3 jobs, service sector jobs. Okay. Middle class, systematically still being destroyed. 78 million Americans are participating in the gig economy because full-time jobs don't pay enough to make ends meet. 66% of all jobs pay less than $20 an hour. Earnings for low-skilled jobs have stayed very flat for 40 years. Average young adult with student loan debt has a negative net worth. I'm just going to read a couple of them. Poverty rates in the U.S. suburbs have increased by 50% since 1990. 51 million U.S. households can't afford basics like rent and food. And 4 out of 10 Americans do not have enough money to cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money or selling something. 22% of all Americans can't pay all of their bills in a typical month. And poverty is growing really fast. Where? In the suburbs. Middle class. U.S. inflation accelerates to 6-year high, eroding wages. More evidence that housing affordability is getting worse. Half of Americans aren't taking a summer vacation this year. $28,166 is what it costs to provide health care for an American family of 4 for 1 year. 39%, hang on. That's not a bad muffler. That's a muffler that I guess some guy thought it would sound great. Whatever they do to it. But 39% of Americans have enough savings to cover a $1,000 emergency. America is unprepared for the coming jobs apocalypse. Already we are seeing retail stores close down all over. And yes, they are still closing down all over during the Trump years. Many mom and pop stores that just can't make it anymore because of the rules and regulations and taxes, and so they close up shop, and all of it is deliberate because they want monopolies. The big box chain stores and restaurants and the fast food crap restaurants. That's what they are leaving us. New age of automation. Automation could destroy as many 73 million U.S. low-skilled, low-wage laborers by 2030. It's 2018, that's 12 years. Already we see robots taking over jobs. And America is pretty much a low-skilled, low-wage labor country with a pocket of the high-skilled in Silicon Valley. So this is coming. More and more Americans will be out of jobs due to automation, and yet somehow the federal government can still collect record taxes, individual taxes. You know, I see this headlined, every quarter. Feds collect record individual income taxes. Record. Then the next quarter. Record. Then the next quarter. Record. Well, I don't even know if that's true, because individuals are really, maybe it is true, because Americans now know they live in a police state. They now know that if they don't pay up, they could be thrown in jail, they could be thoroughly destroyed. But the federal government collected a record $1,143,141,000 in the first 8 months of fiscal 2018. 2 quarters. But interesting, corporation income tax collections declined. Americans, you individuals, you are getting so unbelievably screwed over left and right. You pay higher taxes, and you get nothing for it, and you pay those taxes, and illegal immigrants get an awful lot from it. Are you tired now? But what needs to happen is Forget about the willfully ignorant, choosing to be willfully ignorant. Clearly, they have made a choice to remain children. Okay. But those who are, quote unquote, awake, misnomer, it's an awakening process. Clearly, that is the case when you have an awful lot of people with an awful lot of knowledge about all of us being destroyed, and at the same time, they support Trump. Well, you need to do work on yourself. You need to clear up this confirmation bias. You need to, step out of your comfort zone and really take a look at what is happening here in our country. We are still being destroyed. The middle class is still being destroyed. You are still being ripped off. The geoengineering, you're still being sprayed with an awful lot of poisons. 5G, Trump, national security policy. Get that 5G cell structure up and running. So, all links are below. Hi everybody, it's June 12, 2018. I am at the Economic Collapse, Michael Schneider's blog. The big secret the mainstream media doesn't want to tell you about. America's soaring suicide rates. Have you heard these rates? They sure have soared. From 1999, 30% increase, and I believe the number is over 45,000 kill themselves every year. 123 Americans commit suicide every single day. Now suicide has become the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, but among Americans between the ages of 10 and 34, it is now the second leading cause of death. So this article started with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. Kate Spade, I guess, made handbag designs. She had taken the fashion world by storm, supposedly living the kind of lifestyle that millions of Americans can only dream about. Anthony Bourdain, well, had a similar life that Americans could only dream about, and they both killed themselves. So Michael Schneider is asking why? Why do people that seemingly have everything going for them decide to kill themselves? Well, he goes into one reason. I'm going to bring you to two reasons, but one that rarely gets talked about is the destruction of family, the living in the country of the lie, the loss of connection, trust. I posted a video, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago about loneliness in Western countries and how many people, that too, loneliness exploding. Why? Because people can't connect. They can't have meaningful conversation with one another. And when people are in need of help and don't have anyone they can go to, that causes a hopelessness. These are factors that don't really get talked about. The destruction of our social relationships, how we relate to one another now, especially since the birth of the internet. Well, let's just talk about Michael Schneider's reason. But here are some more statistics. Among Americans between the ages of 10 and 34, and I did want to read that again, 10, it's now the second leading cause of death. No, it wasn't always this way. So, suicide rates in the United States have risen nearly 30% since 1999. and it's not a trend affecting any one particular demographic group. Virtually all ages are seeing major increases. Hospitalizations for suicidal thoughts and attempts at children's hospitals approximately doubled over a recent 7-year period. Children's hospitals across the country, hospitalizations, why can't I say that word? For suicidal thoughts and attempts doubled from 2008 to 2015. The highest increase was seen among teenagers 15 to 17 years of age. That is very sad. Middle-aged Americans are also seeing a stunning rise in suicides. The age of 45 to the age of 64 is rising faster than for the general population as a whole. Suicides among middle-aged men and women climbed at a higher rate than the overall population. Okay, well, how can we be having a population explosion? All right, not getting sidetracked. Suicide among men aged 45 to 64 increased 43% in a 5-year period, 99 through 2014. And the uptick was even greater among women in that age group. So why is this happening? Well, history tells us that suicide rates tend to go up during economic recessions, but we're not in a recession. Let me just say that our country continues to be a country that is in decline in every area. That includes the economy. So you can listen to Trump and his administration, you can listen to mainstream media reporters talk about how the economy has just, well, Trump, man, what is it, 3.9% unemployment? Please, Trump supporters, you were angry at the Obama supporters for believing the horseshit coming out of his administration. The same horseshit is coming out of the Trump administration. We have 103 million Americans without a job, and they literally don't matter in the figures, the numbers. That's a third of our population. Anyway, researchers have found that people that kill themselves tend to have certain things in common. 42% have relationship problems, 28% substance abuse issues, 16% job or financial problems, 29% some kind of crisis, I guess a different kind of crisis than the crises that are mentioned here. 22% physical health issue, 9% criminal legal problem. Those problems have always existed. So to find the truth, we need to go down the rabbit hole, and it's a rabbit hole that the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about: the use of antidepressants and mind-altering drugs, psychiatric medications, exploding in our society. It has been exploding since 1987. And interesting, the more doctors, psychiatrists write out prescriptions for their patients, well, mental illness has also exploded. The side effects of these psychiatric medications, people experience side effects, they're told, sorry, it's not a side effect. You have another psychiatric disorder, so let me write you out a prescription for that disorder. And then they have more side effects. Oh, it is simply fabulous. And this is unbelievable, the use of antidepressants rose almost 65% in a 5-year period. between 1999 and 2014. A new report, listen to this, the National Center for Health Statistics, a new report, the most recent data available is from 2011 through 2014. They don't have the data for 2015, 2016, 2017, when we are now, well, a society, everything's digital, data very easy to collect. That doesn't sound quite right to me, considering that psychiatrists, doctors, all using computers, everybody who goes into a pharmacy to fill a prescription, all of that data is collected and stored. So I would think that it would be very easy to get the data for 2015, 2016, 17. But that's an aside. So, from 2011 through 2014, the most recent data available, close to 13% of people 12 and older said they took an antidepressant. Said, is the National Center for Health Statistics doing surveys? Is that the data? They're getting surveys? They're just asking questions? All right, that number is up from 11% in 2005, 2008. The most recent numbers have increased by nearly 65% since 1999 through 2002, when 7.7% of Americans reported taking an antidepressant. Yes, numerous scientific studies have shown that there appears to be a link between antidepressant use and suicide. It's not just antidepressants. Psychiatric medications, antipsychotics, antidepressants. It's known. These things increase suicidal ideation. They can induce suicidal ideation in people that have never had any kind of suicidal ideation, as well as homicidal ideation. The biggest review of clinical trials ever conducted found that the use of antidepressants doubled the risk of suicide for those under the age of 18. Why they always do that thing under the age of 18. The black box warnings that pharmaceutical companies had to put on their antidepressants about suicide and suicidal ideation. It was for under the age of 18. So does that suggest it doesn't happen to people over 18? It does. Pharmaceutical companies fail to report side effects and even deaths linked to the drugs. That's well known, well established. Even before Prozac hit the market in 1987, was it Eli Lilly that was the company, the Prozac company? I believe so. They hid that data. Those they included in their experiments, those who killed themselves, those who had suicidal ideation, they scrubbed that from the studies that they submitted to the FDA. An analysis of 70 trials of the most common antidepressants involving more than 18,000 people found they doubled the risk of suicide and aggressive behavior in under 18s. It does it for everyone. So, if you have ever been on these drugs, then you already know that they can really mess with your mind and they can result in people doing some very irrational things. Yeah. Because these drugs are mind-altering, and many people think that they're just fabulous on them. But like Peter Breggin, psychiatrist, the psychiatrist who is most outspoken about psychiatric medications, he writing papers on spellbinding. What these psychiatric medications do to your brain is what alcohol can do to somebody's brain. The alcoholic may think they're the life of the party and everybody's just trying to get away from them. Psychiatric medications, you think you're absolutely fine, but your mind has been altered and your reality has been altered, and you are not capable of assessing your own behavior clearly. So Kate Spade was taking medications for depression and anxiety. And these medications, they claim cure mental illness. So why are so many people killing themselves while they're being treated by a psychiatrist taking psychiatric medications? That doesn't seem quite right. Bourdain, nobody knows if he was on medications, but he spoke about depression. So mainstream media, they're never going to address this because they get an awful lot of money from pharmaceutical companies. And yeah, haven't you seen the commercials? Oh, whatever medication. And I have seen recent commercials. I go to visit this elderly neighbor of mine, and she has the TV on all the time. And commercials come up for medications, and I can't remember what the medications were for, but the list of side effects, which is never an extensive or comprehensive list, they just report a few, but some of those reportings, even death. I heard this commercial for a medication. They said, even death. And I looked at my neighbor and I said, so even death. And Americans are going to go ask their doctors about this medication, hearing that it could cause death. And she looked at me and she said, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Even death. Okay. What is the other radical change that has come about, let's say, in the last 20 years? Microwave radiation, Wi-Fi, all of these wireless gadgets, and extremely low frequencies, which I have been showing you in videos, the extremely low frequencies that make their signature in precipitation on radar. It induces depression. Oh, it induces. It doesn't may induce. It induces. Because, and I say because it's not a may. There are so many studies that our U.S. Army and our Navy have done, as well as the Russians, on extremely low frequencies. The psychiatric symptoms associated with exposure to non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation from mobile telephones, and you see everybody on their mobile telephones, and, well, one of the reasons why people kill themselves was due to those physical medical issues. Wi-Fi, cell phones, Wi-Fi in your home, smart meters, can worsen pre-existing conditions even if it didn't cause them. So you have a whole lot of Americans with chronic medical issues that they can't seem to cure. They can't seem to get themselves better. They worsen, or they're in a chronic state. And when you are in a chronic physical condition that is not pleasant to experience day after day after day after day, month after month, year after year, people get worn down. Microwave frequency electromagnetic fields produce widespread neuropsychiatric effects, including depression. What is this? This is the reported biological phenomena, the effects and clinical manifestations attributed to microwave and radio frequency radiation, a study conducted by our Naval Medical Research Institute collected all of the effects, funded the studies, collected the data to find out a comprehensive list of biological effects, and it's extraordinary. Our Navy, our Army, our government, they know exactly what they are doing to us as we are saturated in an environment with these microwave frequencies. Never before has this ever occurred. So, it's the frequencies coming from smart meters and the Wi-Fi in your home and the Wi-Fi in your office and the Wi-Fi at the stores that you shop at and the Wi-Fi in public schools where your children go to attend, and the cell towers that are on the school property and the cell towers that are outside across the street and all of the antennas that are going up, and the Wi-Fi in your neighbor's apartment, all of the gadgets, the frequencies coming from computer screens and TV screens, and wow, our environment has changed. Could it be one of the reasons why we are seeing an explosion of disease, illness, syndromes, chronic pain? Yeah, it is. So I really recommend that you take a look at this. Heating of organs. Oh God, I can't go through the list. Psychological disorders, depression. Just want to mention sleeplessness, insomnia, when you have chronic insomnia, because these microwave frequencies deplete the melatonin in your brain, and many people now experiencing chronic insomnia. Well, there's a reason why. They use sleep deprivation as torture. That alone causes disturbance, depression, a whole lot of mental fatigue, mental problems, biological effects of electromagnetic radiation, and what do we have here? Let's just do it quickly. Depression. Central nervous system, depression, microwave radiation. Central nervous system research on the effects of radio waves and microwaves. Well, it was widespread, those effects, on the subjects that they included in their studies. And this is Barry Trower's declaration, amended declaration. He was and Barry Trower, if you don't know who he is, he's a former Royal Navy man, specialized in microwave warfare. He was an expert called to testify in a case in Oregon. Parents were the plaintiff, defendant, Portland Public Schools. You have to file lawsuits to get Wi-Fi out of your schools. Wi-Fi, extremely dangerous, especially for children, because their skulls are softer than adult skulls, so the frequencies more easily penetrate the brain, the skull, crossing the blood-brain barrier. What did Barry Trower say? The United States Defense Intelligence Agency warned all of its personnel of low-level microwave effects, depression, suicidal tendencies. And I'm focusing on depression and suicidal tendencies, but cancer, leukemia. Here, a plethora of extensive, well-researched documents from around the world highlighting impairments and illnesses caused by microwave radiation. What are some of those effects? Well, depression, suicidal tendencies. I'll read these though. Arrhythmia, heart attack, cell death, diseases of the blood, interference to bone marrow, brain tumors, DNA damage, altered calcium level in cells, reduction in nighttime melatonin, suppression of the immune system, arthritis, rheumatism, skin problems, lymphatic diseases, vaginal discharge, vascular system disease, tinnitus, leukemia, childhood cancer, sleep problems, mental problems, depression, irritability, memory loss, difficulty in concentrating, headache, diseases, fatigue, suicidal tendencies, miscarriage, infertility. And when you have all of these effects and they become chronic, well, then that person who is experiencing the chronic conditions begin to experience problems within their relationships. Those who don't want to hear it, and when they need care and compassion, it seems, because I've heard from a lot of you, that care and compassion is not there. So, when you have these chronic conditions and you don't have any connection, real deep, meaningful connection from the people who supposedly love you, and that care and compassion is absent, that can create an awful lot of depression. It can also create in that individual, I've got to pretend I'm okay. I've got to pretend I'm okay. I've got to pretend I'm okay day after day after day. And that creates an awful lot of stress, and they become worse. Yeah, that suicide is exploding. Is it really a surprise? It is June 12, 2018. I just received this from a subscriber who lives in Canada, the Alberta area. Amazing supercell in Alberta, Canada, June 10. I'm not going to play any of this video. I think it's a Storm Chaser channel, so they're kind of notorious for giving copyright strikes. So, Alberta, Canada, you have been having pretty intense storms, in the Alberta area. Winds have been pretty intense, flipping semis, barns leveled in Alberta after severe weather, central Alberta on severe thunderstorm watch, tornado touches down as thunderstorm moves northeast across Alberta. Wow. 3 days ago, live east of Edmonton, Alberta, with storms about to develop. Dramatic supercell in Alberta, Canada. Tornado crosses road in Alberta, Canada. And apparently, well, you are in for more storms in the Winnipeg area.
The more I look into Thursday's severe thunderstorm setup through southeastern Saskatchewan and southwest Manitoba, the more complicated it seems. We have a lot of available energy in the atmosphere, but when we look at this region here, it's what we call a cap. There's so much warm air aloft surging out of North Dakota, it kind of inhibits storm formation in this region. So this region, we're not expecting storms to fire off early. North of that, there is a potential here for Regina, northeast towards Yorkton. We could get a couple severe thunderstorms by mid-afternoon. And then the storms continue to push eastwards into parts of Manitoba, and they'll quickly become a linear complex of storms. That formation suggests the threat of strong winds along some of these storms.
You know, look, these guys have to be confronted. If you know of any meteorologists, you need to confront these guys. What? Are they signing confidentiality agreements where they can't speak about weather modification? You cannot tell me that they are not seeing what all of us are seeing on radar and satellites. Supercells. Supercell thunderstorms are perhaps the most violent of all thunderstorm types and are capable of producing damaging winds, large hail, and weak to violent tornadoes. When those moderate to strong atmospheric wind fields, vertical wind shears, the change in wind direction and or speed with height, and instabilities are present. You do the research on weather modification and you will see that the research, they look at the instabilities, the perturbations, instabilities, and they want to control them. So, Alberta, Canada. This is Alberta area of Canada. And what has been going on in this area, along with Saskatoon, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, Regina, Winnipeg. Well, what do we have here? In the area that local meteorologist was just talking about, predicting all of these storms, you have fried storms. You see all of what they call sawtooth. It's like a serrated saw. Those are indications or signatures of frequencies being used. Ultra low frequencies or extremely low frequencies being used right in the area that they're calling for more storms. So, the I call it ultra low frequencies. The extremely low frequencies have been pretty intense from the east to the west coast of Canada, all of Canada. And I have to wonder, how are you guys feeling up there? Because you must be feeling pretty bad. Because the extremely low frequencies can produce an awful lot of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Are we going to call them side effects? So all of the very defined lines that you see in this precipitation are ultra-low frequencies. And when you see them begin to circle around, well, that's the NEXRAD HAARP signature. The high frequency heating with the extremely low frequencies, voila! What do you have? You've got either an earthquake, a cyclone, localized heating. You've got them creating your weather in Canada. I also want to bring you to what I have captured in Canada. In the Alberta area. This is June 8. Boy, the energy that man is emitting right in this area has been pretty intense. All over. Now you can see the signatures of the frequencies being used when there is precipitation. And what you want to look for is very defined lines or the perfect circles. That is not how Mother Nature works, that's how man works when man is bringing you these violent storms. You can see all of the ultra-low frequencies, and I'll wait for that macho guy who has to make his muffler really loud to pass. You can see all of the ultra-low frequencies in the faded green perfect lines, or the precipitation that is blocked with a defined blocking. June 9, 6:40 p.m. Alberta area. You can even see the microwave frequencies when you see the ripple effect in the precipitation. You see those very defined lines? That means that man is controlling your weather, creating those violent storms. So the person in the semi-truck and the person who owns that barn and all of the other damage, you can thank those who are creating. And you can thank your government officials, your military in Canada, in the United States, for bringing you the destruction that you have to suffer. Wow, now that is a shot of a, I don't know, laser beam, microwave beam, scalar beam, an ultra-low frequency being shot out. So this was June 9, 3 hours later. These frequencies being set off for hours and hours at a time, all over in the Alberta area, all over. Edmonton area, where you've been having those violent storms. You've got your meteorologists who are reading from a script. June 10, the supercell day. And you see that nicely defined circle. All of what I am showing you here are signatures of man's hand creating these storms. It's been going on for a very, very long time. Edmonton area, June 11. You can bet those storms are continuing. And when you see these ultra-low frequencies crossing one another, that's when they can create an awful lot of destruction and wind, high winds, abrupt high winds. So June 11, yesterday, this is the Winnipeg area, Saskatoon, Regina. All of the frequencies right smack in your face. I just want to, well, once again, leave you with some documents. Air Command and Staff College, Air University, Operational Defenses through Weather Control in 2030. And let's read the abstract. United States Air Force. I tried to give you different documents with every video. The United States needs to incorporate the defense against directed energy weapons with the same intensity used developing anti-ballistic missile defenses. And advances in technology are beginning to bring weather phenomena under our control. Greatly increased computing power and micronized delivery systems will allow us to create specific perturbations, instabilities in local atmospheric conditions. And these perturbations allow for the immediate and lasting ability to create localized fog or stratus cloud formations. They can create any kind of cloud they want. And guess what? The future of nanotechnology will enable creation of stratus cloud formations. Let's see what else I have. Atmospheric heating as a research tool. Wow, weather modification of storms is also described in this paper. Bernard Eastland, the man behind HAARP. Department of the Air Force, and this is the artificial clouds in the Earth's atmosphere, and they talk about how to create artificial clouds in the Earth's atmosphere. What else? Let me see. Tornadoes. Oh wow, weather modification by artificial satellites. They can, just with this one patent, influence the jet stream, cause precipitation, modify the jet stream path, therefore modify weather. They can cause rapid heating in areas. They can cause small tornadoes, and they can increase the strength of tornadoes, influence wind speed, direction of wind speed, tornado mitigation, weather modification, microwave heating of cold, rainy downdrafts with acoustic energy, extremely low frequencies. Acoustic waves generated by the air heating plasma pattern by oscillating the heating beam at an appropriate acoustic frequency. Well, that's what you just saw on the satellite images. They can create a high humidity air mass or form clouds. They can increase the moisture content of the air mass. This is very frustrating that we cannot get through to people when there is a ton of information documenting all of the research, all of the experiments, and the application of all of these methods to create these storms. I will leave you with this one video. But that is what you are seeing in Alberta. Man creating destruction for you to suffer.
It was also Tesla who put man on his quest to control the weather. He developed a chilling theory for controlling the weather using extremely low-frequency waves.
Hi, everyone. It is June 11, 2018. This is about the hurricanes that are forecasted, predicted. They're all over the place in terms of these hurricanes or tropical storms. Tropical storm Aletta that developed into a hurricane. Now it's weakened. Hurricane Bud, I will show you, clearly manufactured, sitting right off the coast of Mexico. But I first want to start with these earthquakes that have been all over the United States, all over the world. But last night I left a comment or a response to a comment from a subscriber in North Carolina telling her, you had an earthquake in North Carolina. She asking where? Here it is, northeast of Hayes, North Carolina. The earthquake was a 2.7. The depth, only 1.3 miles. When you see these shallow earthquakes, you could guess that it might have something to do with these ultra-low frequencies that have been going off all over the country. And if I get it together, I will post a video showing you all of the ultra-low frequencies that, well, then an earthquake occurs. You had one in Tennessee, New Madrid, wow, right next to the Madrid fault line. This was a 2.5. You've had 8 in Oklahoma, Perry, Oklahoma, Covington. I will show you the laser beams that I have been seeing that are shooting off into Oklahoma. Guys, we're at war, okay? And they are using weather as a weapon. I guess you had one today, or June 9. A 4.4 in Cherokee, Oklahoma. Wow. And then I see articles about these earthquakes, and, well, seismologists, they're doing the research to find out why. Now, I understand earthquakes can be caused by fracking, but they sure can be caused by ultra-low frequencies. You had one June 4, or 2.2 in Salina, Kansas. Washington, last night you had one, but you've been having several. Also in Oregon. The ultra-low frequencies right here in this area. I have posted videos on the ultra-low frequencies that seem to be set off on a regular basis. Nevada, the beams that I have seen in Nevada have been quite extraordinary, actually. So I guess I'll have to do that earthquake video to show you. A 3.8, June 10. I will show you all of the HAARP NEXRAD ultra-low frequencies setting off right here in this area for days, and you have an earthquake. Okay, enough about the earthquakes. How about this hurricane that people are posting videos on? And I spoke with a subscriber friend who lives in Houston yesterday, and she told me that she's concerned. Well, anybody in Houston or anybody along the Gulf Coast would be concerned when people are posting videos claiming that, here, Texas in the crossfire of a hurricane, 6 days until impact. And then the latest is that you may get heavy rain. Here, June 17, landfalling hurricane, tropical storm, plan and prepare now. Yep, here we go. Hurricane Bud on track to impact southwest USA, Mexico, Category 3. NASA just posted this video. NASA observed the once Hurricane Aletta intensify, now weakening quickly. I'm going to show you how all of this is manufactured. Here, Hurricane Bud to strengthen, threaten Mexico with flooding as Aleta weakens. What I want to say to all of you who are posting videos on these storms, on weather, and you don't ever mention weather modification, geoengineering, that these storms are absolutely 100% manufactured by man. You never mention the technology. It is, you are doing a grave disservice to all of your subscribers when you post these videos. And for 6 years running, I still don't ever hear anything about the technology that man is using to intensify, modify, steer the winds, the scalar technology, microwaves, Doppler radar, HAARP, nothing. So when you are posting, wanting so much to get the information out to people, we are at war, they are using weather as a weapon, they are destroying your fellow Americans, and you never mention, you talk as if it is, well, prophesized, or it's like a natural event, and nothing natural about it. Nothing. So yes, it's very upsetting to see this time and time again. We are at war with these people never mentioning that weather is being used as a weapon. Well, you can understand why we are losing the war, and more Americans have to suffer the consequences. So Hurricane Bud, Hurricane Aleta, no, Tropical Storm Aleta. This was sent to me by that Houston subscriber, Blake's blog. Tropical weather headed for Texas. A hurricane could be headed for Texas by next weekend. Well, NOAA shows no cyclones are expected during the next 5 days. Please remember, cyclones, hurricanes, they can be created by Doppler radar. Think of Doppler radar as your mini HAARP stations. They sending these high frequencies, heating the ionosphere, using the extremely low frequency transmitters to create, modify, intensify storms, hurricanes. Okay, so NOAA shows nothing for the next 5 days. Oh, but these other sites like the Canadian model, the European model, they're showing a possible hurricane coming into the Gulf. And this Blake's blog, Blake, I guess, is a meteorologist in Houston. He is claiming that we better go with these models instead of NOAA. How is it that NOAA shows nothing and these models show a possible hurricane developing? You want to answer that? Because it doesn't make any sense. They're all over the place because they are just manufacturing all of this. Hurricanes hitting Texas in June isn't unheard of, but it certainly isn't a common occurrence. Well, when man has the technology to create hurricanes, to induce earthquakes, even volcanic eruptions, man can do anything. But just reading these mainstream media reports on these hurricanes, it is phenomenal. Category 3 Hurricane Bud threatens Mexico, southwest of the United States. Rainfall from Bud or its remnants would be beneficial to the drought-stricken Southwest. It could also cause flash floods if too much falls too quickly, according to AccuWeather. So when you read these mainstream media articles on weather events, you see they are all over the map. Could, maybe, but the worst drought in the United States is in the Southwest, with the most severe conditions in Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. And guess what? Colorado, New Mexico, fires. So Bud has winds of 120 miles per hour. Okay. Let's see. Oh, development may occur. AccuWeather. Now we're down to development may occur. And this is not Hurricane Bud. This is hurricane/tropical storm Aletta. It may occur. Look, I'm not saying that it won't occur. I am not saying that Houston, Louisiana, that you're not going to get a tremendous amount of rain. If they want to flood you out again, they will. I wish that I could say you have nothing to worry about. We all have something to worry about now. We all have something. You're living in a flood zone? Doesn't matter anymore. You're living in areas where tornadoes are extremely uncommon? Doesn't matter anymore. Not one man is using the technology, and then that technology, they're using it as a weapon. They have been all over in the forecasting, the predicting of this major hurricane, the tropical storm, major hurricane, Bud, the tropical storm. Then it became a hurricane, Aletta. Now it's back to tropical storm, Aletta. But this, dated June 11, no. This article came out June 9, and I had bookmarked it. They've updated it, but pretty much it is essentially the same. Hurricane Bud has erupted into a major hurricane in the East Pacific today. Yes, it erupted into a hurricane immediately, and I will show you that. But here, for the Gulf of Mexico, some tropical moisture could enter late this week and jog north-northwest, but development looks unlikely at this point given the amount of wind shear. Did they change the date? Because in between June 9 and June 11, that tropical storm had then been forecasted as a hurricane, and now it's weakened again. I don't know. But this is crazy making. You just don't. We used to be able to predict storms. We used to see them. Meteorologists used to see them turning from tropical storm into a hurricane. They would forecast it. They would watch the development. Now, hurricanes just erupt. And tropical storms, they go from tropical storm to major hurricane, then back to tropical storm within hours. That is not normal. That is not Mother Nature. Here, Hurricane Bud, swirling off the west coast of Mexico, forecast to strengthen into a Category 2. Then it's a Category 3, very quickly. Now it's forecasted at a Category 4. I read an article, and I cannot find that article, and I'm wondering, did they just remove that article that said Hurricane Bud will not make landfall? Now, apparently, it's going to make landfall. What are they saying? Rainfall from Bud or its remnants would be beneficial to the drought-stricken Southwest. It could also cause flash floods if too much falls too quickly, according to AccuWeather. Okay, so they don't know. The hurricane has been sitting off the coast of Mexico for days, and they can't predict what's going to happen. Bud has winds of 120 miles per hour. But then you see articles, it had winds of 80 miles per hour, then it jumps up to 120 miles per hour very quickly. Second hurricane of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, following Aleta, which is rapidly weakening far out in the open ocean. Oh God, this article, Category 4, hurricane status. By early Friday morning, Aleta rapidly strengthened to a major hurricane, reaching Category 4. Oh my God. Well, guess what? Satellite images showed nothing. It showed the manufacturing of clouds, but it did not show any hurricane. But suddenly it's a Category 4 hurricane, and it went from a tropical storm to a Category 4 within a few hours. But now it's diminishing. But Bud now is making its round of threats. Bud is expected to move northwestward into Wednesday as it strengthens. All right, this is Bud. This is what is infuriating is not these meteorologists going along with the script. And the script now is all over the place. And I'm wondering if it's intentional. Do they do this to see if Americans can pick up on, well, the crazy-making forecasting? Is it intentional? Because they can't quite get these hurricanes going? So the meteorologists are winging it? I don't know. But what is infuriating is not being able to get through to our fellow Americans and people who post these videos, never mentioning weather modification and the use of weather as a weapon. So, before I even start to play this, the loop, look at how it is squared off. This is not Mother Nature. Mother Nature does not work in squares like this. She does not have all of these lines that you can see, all of the geoengineering on the periphery of this man-made storm. And you can't tell me that meteorologists cannot see this. Manufactured cloud, right there. And they can manufacture clouds by lasers. This is hard, watching it time and time and time again throughout the years, listening to the lies, listening to people post videos on YouTube, sounding exactly like mainstream media meteorologists. And you contact them, ask them to talk about weather modification, weather being used as a weapon, geoengineering, and they fail to ever mention it. So, you can see all of the geoengineering right here, and I'm sorry guys, but this ain't a normal hurricane. Aleta. This is Aleta. Really? It looks like it's being split open by microwave laser beams, some frequency hitting it. You can see the geoengineering on the periphery once again, and you can see the manufacturing of cloud. But I will tell you, all of the time that I was on in telecast, I never saw anything that looked like a hurricane. But Bud, well, that's very different. So this is June 8. This is what I captured. Lined clouds, seemingly perfectly lined in Mexico. And I went all the way down past Durango, and there was no hurricane there on June 8. There was no hurricane on June 8. June 9, voila, major hurricane erupted in one day. Isn't that interesting? The articles that I said that I read that it was not going to make landfall, were they saying that on June 9 because, oh, June 9 had the lined clouds as well. 3 days running, I will show you those lined clouds being manufactured in the same place. But as you can see, Hurricane Bud is being stopped with frequencies coming onto the land right there. That is not a natural hurricane. You can see all of the geoengineering taking place. You can see all of the lines. You can see the grids. And you can see the frequencies being used. This is a creation of man. Are you getting tired of this? Do they do this, perhaps Photoshop their satellite images? Because they will be bringing major flooding, high winds, all of which can be created by the technology that they have. And because there will be so much flooding, they have to call it a hurricane. They don't even have to create a hurricane anymore. You see, those lines, it's like, what, does the hurricane have a tail? Oh, the hurricane now is blowing holes through its cloud. Microwave frequencies, lasers. So this was June 10. This was last night. And, well, as you can see, Hurricane Bud, it didn't make landfall. It is in exactly the same place. And it's still showing every signature that every meteorologist should be aware of that indicates that no, this is not a natural storm. This is being created by the aerosol spraying, the cloud manufacturing, and the frequencies. And once again, you can see the line of clouds right there in the same spot in Mexico. 3 days running. 3 days running. And I guess this thing is Aleta, the hurricane, tropical storm hurricane. Really, it's a semicircle of cloud manufactured by man. I want to emphasize what the European Parliament said back in 1999. A commission was formed to investigate HAARP. This is what they said. HAARP may well be the most silent and deadly weapon of all time, primarily because it is invisible to the naked eye, and thus its existence can be denied by government and readily dismissed by media. But at this point, their dismissal, media's dismissal, you can look at every mainstream media, meteorologist, journalist as the enemy, because there's mountains of evidence that prove that our weather has been taken over by man. They have usurped Mother Nature. But HAARP, you may as well look at Doppler radar stations as mini HAARP stations, and I will link below to Dutch Senses Dutch Census video, NextRed, Weather Radar, and HARP, Weather Modification Explained. And I will link below to Weather War 101's video on HARP, NextRed, how our Doppler radar stations are, unfortunately, now very powerful. Doppler radar, high frequencies shot up into the ionosphere, coming back, the extremely low frequencies, voila, you got an earthquake, you have a volcanic eruption, or you have a hurricane, flash flooding, tornado, whatever. It's a war. They are using weather as a weapon.
the vegetables and fruits that get it from the soil by just putting it directly into the largest organ of your body, which is your skin.
True. And people say, well, my blood pressure rise. I was told not to eat salt. It's not that kind of salt. Table salt is what gives you a high blood pressure.
11 trillion interstellar credit, which is like the in-game current.
Yeah. Hundreds of
See
thousands
what
of
I'm
dollars.
saying with this video game investment theory for the future now, Sargon? I was talking about on DP. And you disagreed.
I can't remember what it was now, I'm afraid.
Oh. Well, I was talking about how adversity is going to have to be virtualized in the future.
Oh, yeah,
People
yeah.
can just get invested in games to do that.
Well, it's true. I mean,
body as cool as possible, wearing cotton, all these types of things. So I hope this has helped. Stay out of